Miss Yanka. You guys do have permission to unmute yourselves. You should.
Hi.
Hey, what's going on?
Everybody have to get admitted in, whoever wants to join.
Yeah, I mean, I could take it off if that's necessary.
Yeah, because I can't let them in.
Because like imagine having to let just everyone in.
Yeah, I'll take it off for now. I'll lock the meeting at like in half an hour in maybe. How's everyone doing?
Good day.
Good day, Salam, huh?
It's a great day.
What's going on, everyone?
Charlie Brown.
What's going on?
Time to start the live stream. See if this is working. Live.
Does anybody know where Anya or
Should be there.
Okay. We're live on Facebook, I believe. Can someone confirm that and like go on our Facebook page to see if it's working?
I'll try.
Ugh.
Yeah,
We're live?
Mhm.
Someone nice. Like go on our Facebook page to see if it's working. Mark, can you talk so I could see if your audio comes up on the live stream?
Hello. My name is Mark Young. Is it working?
I'm not sure. I can't tell. It's working. Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that. We're live. You talk so I could see if you're okay. Let's see, 6:53. 7 more minutes. Got a good amount of people that should be coming. We got a few emails. I'm trying to see how many it was.
Oh, you did RSVP?
Yeah. Oh, I gotta give them this one person too. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 14 people RSVP through email, and I guess the rest hopefully join through what's it called? The Instagram. And then even if we don't get as many people as we'd like, we're gonna record the whole thing, and all the best clips that you guys say, we'll be posting it. So no matter what, people are gonna hear what you have to say. So yeah.
Oh, we need Hammy. Okay.
Oh, you can't hear Michelle? He's not working. Let me see. How do I figure this out?
Bijan, are you the moderator?
Charles is moderating. I'm kind of just running technical side, I guess you could say, for this. Yeah. How do I?
Looking real studious, Mr. Dada.
I was just studying for my MCAT.
Just focus on all of this. It's all right.
13 participants. I guess for the people in the live stream, I'm going to end the live stream and restart it to see if I could figure out this audio issue. So we'll be back in a second. Charles, once it hits, give it like let's give it like to 7:05, and then let's kick it off for us.
All right. Thanks for everyone for being here. See Abe, we got Gustav. Everyone's yeah, back. All right, I'm gonna wait a few more minutes. See if we got any stragglers coming in. And then we'll get started. All right. Okay. So I guess I'm gonna get this started, get the show on the road. Really thankful for all the community members out here watching this live stream and being part of this discussion. So let's get started. So before we get into like the big substantive stuff, I want to first introduce everyone to our panelists. So I'm gonna let each of these people are amazing on their own. So I'm gonna let them introduce themselves. So we can go ahead and we can start with Mark.
All right. Thanks, Charles. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Nathaniel Yonker. I'm going to be a rising junior at Rutgers University, New Brunswick, where I double major in political science and labor studies, and I minor in critical intelligence. That's the study of keeping communities actually secure and safe. I am part of the West Orange Young Democrats. I was the student council president at West Orange High School, also the president of the Uni Club during my time there. And I'm really glad everybody came out and showed up for this discussion.
Awesome. Yes, thank you. And before I'm not gonna like tell you guys who to go, what's gonna go next. I'm gonna just let you guys go whenever. But I just before Mark just reminded me, I should have said this earlier. My name is Charles Borasad. I'm also the president of the West Orange Young Dems. We're gonna be an upcoming junior at the George Washington University, and yeah. So anyone can just pick it up from there.
I'll just go next. Okay, so my name is Salam Waldai. I'm a rising sophomore at Cornell University. I'm majoring in industrial and labor relations, and I'm triple minoring in inequality studies, policy analysis and management, and law and society. And with West Orange, I'm a member of West Orange Young Democrats, obviously. I'm a member of West Orange Youth Caucus, the newly formed. And during my time at West Orange High School, I was class of 19, so I was the 2019 student council president, and I was working with Community Club vice president 2019 as well. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be here and for that everyone has showed up.
Awesome. So next person can go up whenever they want.
Yeah, so sorry about that. My name is Abraham Dada. Thank you, Charles and the Young Dems, for putting this together. I'm a rising senior at Harvard studying neuroscience and medical anthropology. I graduated from the high school in 2017. During my time there, I was super involved and the class council president. Some of our other panelists are.
Awesome, awesome. Let's keep it going.
Hey everyone, I'm Kaya Baker. I'm class of 2020 at West Orange High School. I just finished my term as student council president. I was the co-president of Unity Club, and I'm a rising freshman at NYU.
My name is Gustav Hall. I'm graduating senior from West Orange High School, and I'm an incoming freshman at Brown University, where I'm deciding between either majoring in political science, international relations, or engineering.
I'll go. Hi, my name is Anya Dillard. I am the incoming student council president at West Orange High School, as well as a rising senior. I'm also an activist and philanthropist in my community. And one of my passions is giving back, especially to communities of color, and encouraging more students in my community to get more involved and become more vocal about social and political issues that they're passionate about. So it's nice to meet all of you guys.
Hi guys, my name is Tammy Williams. I am the Human Relations Chairwoman in West Orange. So thank you to Charles and the Young Democrats for inviting me to participate on this most important discussion. I have done several things in the community. As far as education is concerned, I'm actually getting my MBA in public administration. So I will be completing that in 2021. I'm also a candidate for town council in 2020, and passing it off to the person to my right.
Hi, I'm Tamia Blackwell, her daughter. I am a rising senior at West Orange High School, and I'm very thankful to be on the panel today.
Hi, my name is Amber Dalmacy. I'm a rising sophomore at Rutgers University. I plan on double majoring in political science and sociology, and I was West Orange High School class of 2019. So.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you guys for telling us your story, introducing yourselves. Hopefully we'll be able to keep in touch and make sure, not just with us, but at the Young Dems, but also with the community members that are here and who are watching today. So just to move right along, we have seen today a rise in activism, I should say, especially when it comes to the area of police brutality and how we go about dealing with that, especially like racism and systemic racism. And now with the protests that have been sparked all across the nation and across the globe, we recently just had one here in West Orange. So each of you, can you just like explain in your own thoughts and feelings in light of the recent West Orange protests? Anyone, this is up, yeah, anyone can go.
Yeah, with the recent West Orange protests, I'm very happy, like very proud of the turnout. There was about 3,000 people that came, and I was like very surprised. I honestly thought I was going to be speaking to a crowd of like maybe 500 people at most. I didn't realize it was like when I saw everyone there, I was like so happy, and like at that moment, it kind of made me proud to be from West Orange. But at the same time, that does not mean that like we're anywhere near to the finish line. That's just like that was a major step we needed to take, but we still have a lot more to go, you know.
Yeah, I understand, because when I was there at the protest, I didn't know what to expect, how many people would be there, but it was like so many people like lined out the street, roads were cut off. The young youth caucus, West Orange Youth Caucus, did an amazing job organizing that whole protest, and it was just amazing. But enough about me. Let's get more of the panelists' thoughts.
Yeah, just picking off where Salam started. I think that I was very, I guess, not necessarily surprised, but very happy to see the enthusiasm and energy from the youth caucus and their organizing capabilities, and seeing all of the young residents of West Orange sort of gather and vocalize their thoughts, you know, and like create a petition and see the change that came about from that, and like Mayor Parisi passing some ordinances as a result of our like organizing. I think I'm very inspired by that momentum that we have gained. But, you know, just as Salam said, I think this is just the start of a very long movement, really.
Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Also picking off of what Abraham and Salam said, I'm very proud of West Orange community, but I'm not shocked of our younger crowd, the younger generation. I think the product of West Orange High School has always been like leadership and activism, and to push us for progress, to do more, and like kind of be that like city on the hill for our in our area of Essex County, New Jersey, and to push us to be better than, you know, the people who came before us. I just hope that that same momentum and energy carries over into everybody's daily life when the protests die down. So like that's the part of West Orange I'll be really proud of if I see that like change in people's lives, days, months, and years from now.
Yeah, I think Mark brought up a good point, but I think this was the other panels brought it up too. But the momentum that is being carried with all the protests, because don't get me wrong, like we all know, police brutality, that's the racism, systemic racism has been an issue in this country for as long as I can remember, and longer than that. So we know that this has been an issue. We know it's been talked about, but this is really the first time, I'm going to say, like in my lifetime, where I've seen like such a national focus on it. And especially whereas we have like incidents happening like in big cities like New York, like LA, like Chicago. But now we're having even small cities like West Orange playing its role, playing a part and speaking out. So yeah, the momentum that you guys are talking about is also a very trivial, very big part to what's being seen today. But yeah, let's get some more panelist thoughts.
I think it was a really beautiful thing to see everybody out there united. Because we saw it throughout that week in West Orange by Washington, and I feel like it really culminated in the protest at City Hall. And I feel like, just as you said, seeing so many different cities, so many different states, so many different countries joining in on these protests, it really is a beautiful thing to see us uniting. But just as all the other panelists said, this is just the first step. It doesn't end with this. It needs to keep going. And as you were saying, it's all about momentum. We definitely have a lot of momentum currently.
I just wanted to say
Go ahead.
that as a parent, adult in the community, having lived here for the same amount of time as you all are living for most of you, I was quite proud to see our students, our children lead this movement. And I agree with you completely, which speaks to the need for me to be here to listen, because we need to make sure we listen to not only the things that we want to see change, but we need to listen to the things that you all need to see changed. I was taken aback. I have lived here, my children have been educated here, and some of the stories that I heard you all tell brought tears to my heart, because this is my community. And you all have to take this energy, create a roadmap, a game plan, and continue moving forward toward progress so that the change that you want to see becomes a reality. It can be done. You have the ear of the community. You have the ear of leadership. Now let's just be strategic and get laws changed and make progress for our community.
Going off of what everybody else highlighted, I was just very happy to see that these speakers were brown and black youth and young leaders. I'm glad that we weren't overshadowed by administrators or just adults, because we really are the ones that are in the streets every day, at school every day, really experiencing what, like Ms. Williams pointed out, sometimes adults don't know we experience these things in this town. So I was glad that our voices were highlighted during this protest.
Yeah, definitely point that Kaya made. I was talking to an adult about this. She was just saying like how she's so proud that everything was completely organized by the youth. And like she made a really good point. She said that the youth organized it. It's not that we organize with adults. We said to the adults, we invited you guys. Like y'all can come if you want to, but this is a youth-led event. And I think that is very powerful, the message, because we literally are the future. We are the ones who are experiencing these things. We are the ones who are going to have to live with these things, and we're the ones who want to change these things. And I believe that the protests, as amazing as it was, we definitely need to keep up the momentum. We need to make sure that change the way how things are in West Orange. Because obviously, like speaking, we can't change how everything is going on across the country with the systemic racism, but we can definitely change how we are at home.
I definitely agree with what everyone's been saying, especially Kaya and Gustav, as well as Salam. I felt so fortunate to be able to speak, especially on the topic of keeping the momentum of the movement going and using this as an opportunity to let our voices be heard and to demand change. And it was so beautiful to see the people that we see every day and that we are friends with and that we've grown up with and been taught by, all these people who came out for a cause that is more than worthy of the attention that it got. I was so happy that the turnout was so amazing and that people were really paying attention to something that has been going on for way too long and that needs to be addressed. Even in communities that are seen to be so beautifully diverse, such as ours, there are still many issues regarding our administration and even our state legislation that do need to be changed. So I'm really glad that such an amazing effort was, successful, and that I was able to be a part of it and to be a member of this amazing caucus. And to see these kinds of conversations being had now, and to see real change, being put forth and being demanded. So, yeah.
It's crazy when I think about it. Back when I was in high school, like I didn't really start getting into like politics or advocacy until like later down the road, like senior year. Like it was never really a big point for me. But now looking back and seeing how there are people my age and younger who who don't just have thoughts about politics, but are actively getting involved to try to play a part. It's just it's a testament that shows that something really tapped in to the youth here in West Orange, right? There was something that really clicked that allowed the youth to mobilize in a way that we never seen before, really. Not since I've been living in West Orange my entire life, so it's really interesting and very amazing to see such an awakening in the youth when it comes to political advocacy. And just to add on top of that, not only was it organized by such amazing youth in our town, but it was also run with such vigor. A lot of the speeches that I heard while I was at the march or the protest was some people youth spoke with such passion, such vigor inside them that it really moved me, and I'm sure it moved many other people across the town. But I think that type of vigor stems from a lot of the experiences that people have had in this town. Now, this kind of leads into my next question, but I know a lot of people in West Orange think, oh, we're West Orange, right? We're a nice old town, small town. Nothing bad happens here, right? We're not like New York or some big city where you can find racist or injustices all over the place. But West Orange, we're good. Police, I've never had a problem with them, right? So I guess, how do you challenge that narrative while also trying to push the BLM movement, especially here in West Orange, to those who would make such an argument? And on top of that, how is your experience with, if you mind sharing, how was your experience with like racism growing up here in West Orange, if you had any experience with that at all?
I think, I think that, to answer your question, I think that people tend to say things like that because a lot of people think of racism and like any ism as something that directly affects you, when in reality, like most times it indirectly affects you. So a lot of people don't even know that they're like having these racist tendencies or they're being ignorant and stuff like that. So when they are doing that and they get challenged for it, it tends to be more of a conflict than an educational like conversation. So I think that's what makes it like difficult for people to get past the whole we're West Orange narrative, we're like we're all together kind of thing, because they don't know like the privileges they have. So yeah.
Definitely, going off what Amber said, I 100% agree with her. And also, if you have a protest, I am very sorry if I sound like I'm repeating myself, but this is pretty much what my entire speech was about. This West Orange, well, one, what Amber said, and two, because of that, they try to act as if because we're so diverse and so accepting of all cultures, we want to be colorblind, and that is not what we want at all whatsoever. We want you to acknowledge the fact. Saying that you're colorblind is you're not acknowledging the fact that I'm a Black person facing these oppressions in this country, and that's not what we want at all whatsoever. We want you to acknowledge this, and in West Orange, as a result of colorblindness, it causes like an insane amount of microaggressions. I know, like me growing up down the hill, just telling anyone I'm from down the hill, I get the look on the face. I see looks on people's faces. They're like, oh, you're from down the hill? Oh, you went to Washington? It's when like going to Roosevelt, going to the high school, talking to my white peers. It's just the small things. They don't even realize what they're doing and what they're saying is offensive. And then when you try to teach them, it turns into more of a conflict. Like, whoa, I'm not racist. And it's like I cursed at them. And it's like, no, I'm just trying to tell you, like asking me my opinion on the civil rights movement, asking me my thoughts on slavery, that's a microaggression. Asking me why I'm so articulate, that's a microaggression. And they just take it the completely wrong way. So I don't want to take up people's time.
going off of what Salam said, I feel like she said it perfectly. What we encounter most in West Orange are these microaggressions, and sometimes people might not realize what they're saying is harmful and hurtful. But I think it's up to us to call them out when they're doing things like that, and to make sure that they understand that what you're saying is harmful, what you're saying is hurtful. And I feel like a lot of times in West Orange, it's very much people not understanding that what they're saying is a racist comment, is a
Yeah. Yo, Gustav, you there?
or when,
Who's the host?
Yeah,
Who's the host?
it's me. Who is that? So I can kick him.
Yeah, it's Russia.
Russia. Let me see.
Yeah, go down again.
Huh.
We might have, yeah.
Oh, I see it.
Okay, there you go. Kick him off.
Bye bye.
Thank you. All right.
All right. Sorry for that disturbance, but yeah, and let's get back to where we left off. Gustav, you're still.
yeah, and then yes, it's like, and then when you tell people, you know, where you're going to college, the first thing that I get asked is, "Oh, are you playing basketball there?" I've like, there's been multiple times when people are just like, "Oh, you must be, you know, they're on a basketball scholarship," and I feel like people need to realize that what you're saying is going to be offensive to people, and you have to be aware of it, and it's up to us to call people out when they do say stuff.
What I admire most about what you all are doing, from my perspective as an adult, um, I see us parents and older adults as being more accepting of those microaggressions. We have learned to not react or respond to that very same language that you all are now beginning to experience and are articulating that is your experience. And what is most amazing to me is that you all are not having it. It's unacceptable. And so sometimes where we are a little more patient and or tolerant, I see you all saying, just as you said momentarily ago, we're having this rally, and either y'all come or y'all don't, but we're having it. And so that's your same disposition and your attitude. And it's very revolutionary, but it's also very respectable. And so again, I have nothing but mad love and respect for what you all are doing. It makes me smile, and I'm very proud to be a part and included in the conversations.
I also think something to touch upon when it comes to racism in our town and our community, we have to look at is that if you think about how Black Lives Matter was perceived maybe a few years ago in our town, just looking at the West Orange 411 or groups or spaces like that, it might not have been so well received. Or if you discussed defunding the police and what that looked like, it might not have been so well received. And that we have to be able to have these uncomfortable conversations, especially with younger people. I think about how many people in the high school or in middle school at the time did not want to get involved in political conversations in general, just because their parents either kept them out of that kind of realm, or they were apathetic towards it. So I think we have to be wise going forward about how we're going to talk about like Black Lives Matter in our community, right? It's not just like Black Lives Matter is the bare minimum. How can we push allies, and how can we push people who want to support the Black Lives Matter movement to talk about being anti-racist, to talk about supporting Black people in your community, to step up? I know Salam spoke about in her speech that no one advocated for her, or no one spoke up for her when these things happened, when people compared her hair to cotton or touched her hair without her permission. How do you teach younger kids, starting at the age of 5, whatever it may be, that, hey, you step up for your friend when someone does something like that? Because that's a lot of the racism that's also complicit in racism in our town, that a lot of allies or people who want to self-identify as an ally do not step up in those times of need. And that's what's also just as harmful.
I think that we have to really hold the adults accountable moving forward. Because I was having this conversation with my father today, I was telling him, like, there are so many people in corporate America, adults in corporate America, that deal with these same microaggressions, deal with the same racist comments and issues. And sometimes they won't address it or they won't face it head on. And there's been such an emphasis on the youth is going to drive this movement, the youth is going to really make America change. And I feel like there isn't enough emphasis on, but the adults that work in corporate America, the teachers that teach at West Orange High School, the principals that work at these schools, they need to hold themselves accountable and they need to really 100% not condone racism, not condone these microaggressions. And what fuels these microaggressions are not teaching about Black success in history or in English, not sticking up for yourself in a meeting if you work in the corporate world. So it's just things like that that the adults have to really acknowledge. You need to do more than just your part. It can't all be on the youth, because you guys are in the workforce. We're not yet. Like, we're in college or we're in high school. So everybody really does need to do their part. And that would contribute to making West Orange, the world, the United States, a better place.
All right, I'm gonna let the rest of the panelists speak, but I just want to say two things first. One, for the people who are not on the panel, we're gonna have an open discussion at the end. So please make sure to think of some questions to ask our panelists at the end. But two, I'm gonna let other people respond to the last question, but I really want to go off the point that you just made about getting parents and adults involved in the whole BLM movement. So I'm gonna let everyone go through, whoever people who haven't spoken yet on this issue, speak, and then we're gonna get into how we get adults involved. All right.
I wanted to go off of what Kyle was saying about how we need to hold teachers accountable, hold parents accountable, hold people in this town accountable, and that's kind of what I was trying to touch upon at the very beginning when you asked about our thoughts about the protest. Because the protest was amazing and everything, but my main thought when I saw all those people there is this going to be in vain? Are people actually going to start learning to be an ally, start actually speaking up against all these forms of racism? Are people actually going to start making change? And I really think that definitely in classroom settings and in schools, it's very important, the role of an adult and the roles of adults within the household.
Yeah, that's a great point. We talked a little bit now about the parents getting involved, but Mark actually brought up a point about students, people young age being apathetic towards politics, right, or getting involved in that type of thing. So you guys being activists, young activists, smart, intelligent, how do you get more young people in your age group involved to play their part in the community, especially when it comes to advocacy?
Well, I think that this issue in particular of police brutality, of combating systemic racism, right? Like, I don't think that this is a political issue. I think that this is a human rights issue, right? Like, slavery has been abolished. We went through Reconstruction. We went through a civil rights movement led by Dr. King, led by Malcolm X, and a ton of other brilliant Black activists, but we still haven't seen the change that we needed. We still don't see the equity and equality that is needed to sort of undo all of those 400 years of systemic oppression on Black people, period. And I think that, especially now, I know Mark brought this point up earlier about sort of people not being as receptive to the initial Black Lives Movement years prior, right? But I think that this sort of time of the Corona pandemic, when everyone's stuck at home, everyone has their phones in their face and just a wide access to media, is sort of making that more prominent, right? Like when I go on Instagram or Twitter or something, I just see a bunch of posts and I'm really happy to see this, right? I think that this is bringing more people into the movement, more young people in particular, because their feeds are just flooded with information, flooded with posts about like how you can vote and things of that nature. And like I would say I'd be shocked if we don't see like a rise in voting activity from people in our demographic as a result of this. But I think a large part is like carrying this momentum as we go back to school, if we reopen, hopefully, and sort of holding our peers accountable and holding our allies accountable as well moving forward beyond voting.
Yeah, I was going to say that I 100% agree with Abraham in that sense, that even just starting off of education, educating yourself is so important. And even with Instagram and Twitter, with all of it rushing now, when that slows down, you still need to be educated. You can bring it up to your friends, bring it up to the community that you live in, your neighborhood. I think it doesn't need to stop. It needs to continue to go from there. And even just friend groups and friendships, your neighbors, it's so important that you guys are having those conversations, because you never know what people really understand and what they don't. And it's so important to talk and to make it comfortable and to make it a regular thing to be educated.
I think another reason why it's hard to get people so involved is what Amber was saying in the very beginning. Like the topic of race, people kind of like, they get insulted when you say something that differs their views. So because of that, it's just like it's not even like an uncomfortable topic. It becomes kind of like an insulting topic, like a conflicting topic. And it's just like, we need to break the idea that talking about race is an issue, which it's not. Like, we have to start becoming, we need to start having these uncomfortable conversations. We need to start breaking this idea that we can't be speaking about the race, we can't be speaking about the systemic issues, we can't have differing opinions, because at the end of the day, like Abraham said, this isn't a political issue, it's a human rights issue.
I think, oh, go ahead, Mark.
Oh, go ahead, Amber. Go ahead.
I think to go off of what Abraham and Salam were saying about the whole teaching it not as like it's a humanist issue and not a politics issue, I think that when it comes to teaching people about politics, you should tell them in a way that relates to them. Because I've realized that people really only care about things, like as bad as it is, people only care about things that relate to them. And I think people need to start teaching or talking about politics in a way that it's like full circle. Because like, yeah, like you said, there might be a spike in voting or whatever, but like people might not know that voting suppression, stuff like voting suppression exists, or like, why should we help those people because we already have the privilege of voting? We could go up to Gregory or to our elementary schools and vote, stuff like that. So I feel like teaching people that, well, without those voters, your vote is kind of meaningless. I think teaching people that politics comes full circle all the time, I think that's what people should start doing also.
If I may jump in, one of the things that I hear you guys talking about is accountability. And so one of the things that I think is really important is that you define accountability, because we can start saying we're going to hold our legislators, our leadership, our adults, our parents, our teachers accountable. But we also need to have a real definitive outline of what that accountability looks like. And it relates to keeping the momentum going. We've got to think about how to get you guys civically engaged and continue to be civically engaged. So you guys got to think about some when we all vote movements, some youth voter drives, some obviously the engagement of getting the petition signed with some of the demands that you all required or requested, making sure that you see those all the way through. So yes, there's going to be some ordinances that are a response to some of the initial demands and some quick fixes to some of the systemic challenges so that we can make everybody feel good. But we also really need to look at what needs to change as far as hiring practices in our community, education in our community. We need to make some different demands. If one school is getting a journal and another school is getting just a regular composition book, then we need to look at our educational system and understand, why isn't this a district-wide distribution? We're creating systemic disparity within our own community without even thinking about it. So if you all aren't going to call us to task on these things, instead of holding them in, when you experience it, you all have to have some type of network going on where when you identify things that are wrong, we respond to them immediately. We don't allow these things to build up and continue over time and time again. We've got to address these concerns head on. These are going to be extremely uncomfortable conversations. They're uncomfortable for you, they're uncomfortable for us, they're going to be uncomfortable for our counterparts and our peers. But we have to have some systems in place where we continue. And so that's what I want you all to think about. You know, we got to get some of these teens who are 17 and 18 registered to vote for November. We've got to make sure people get ballots in for July. We've got a voting in July. Everybody has the opportunity to vote by mail in the state of New Jersey. What are you all going to do as young Democrats, as West Orange Youth Caucus, to get your young people civically engaged? So that's where I want you all to start focusing on as well.
And bouncing off of what Ms. Williams said, like as she said, we really need to make sure that we are all going out to vote, but we also need to make sure that we also are aware of who we're voting for, because I think one of the biggest issues is that when you have a movement like the Black Lives Matter movement, you have a huge voice that we have now. A lot of legislators are going to use progressive rhetoric. They're going to talk like they're about change, but they're not actually going to actively look to push policies that will bring about change. So we need to be aware as voters who is going to be a fraud and who is genuinely going to look to bring about policies that are actively going to progress our society.
Yeah, I think a good point has been made, especially when it comes to civic engagement, when it comes to like voting and stuff. If I'm not mistaken, today we actually got like ballots. And I think now more than ever, it's really important for us to start thinking about who we vote for, not just when it comes to federal elections, but also state and local elections. Because as Gustav just talked, there are people who talk the talk but never walk the walk, right? So it's really important that we do our background research and really dig deep and get involved and figure out who is the best person for us. But more specifically, I want to touch on what Ms. Williams was talking about the agenda, about what do we need to do, right? Is when it comes to like asking for, when it comes to like creating policy changes. I'm sure, as you all know, the West Orange Youth Caucus actually had a petition with all like the changes or the demands that they wanted to see, right? Now, whether or not we're gonna get those demands through, that's also gonna depend on who we vote for, right? So making sure we are on top of that, making sure, like Sam said, youth voter registration drives, and getting more people involved in things like that. That's also a very important step. But this kind of takes me to the next point about like what type of change would you like to see in West Orange, especially when it comes to like things like public education, policing, accountability, things and so forth. And if you haven't read the petition, that has a lot of great ideas, but I know there are some other ideas circulating out there as well. So what do you guys think would be like the most beneficial idea to implement here in West Orange?
I think something that can be done throughout our entire town in every public school is a reform to our education system. That it was said before that Black history has to be taught outside of Black History Month, right? But it's more than just that. It's looking at, you know, things with a critical race lens. It's, if you're going to be studying, you know, biology, and if we're going to look at like real life examples, we have to look at how, you know, there are health disparities between different races. That's important because that's a real life thing. You can't just learn, you know, how a cell is made. If we want students to become, you know, pioneers of the future, you have to understand what role they're going to take in our community, in a diverse community, right? It's not enough for us to just know the basics. It's for us to be able to apply it into like a real world setting. And I think that can start at any age, right? It can start beyond just having book reports on, you know, Black authors maybe in February alone, but it can be done in September or October. And it doesn't have to be subjected to only, you know, a certain month. It can expand beyond Black History Month, as I said before. The other part of which I want to go into this is that I think there has to be some form of, in high school, there's an elective called Race, Class, Gender, Ethnicity that I think students can take as like juniors or seniors. But I think classes like that have to be given before you reach that level within your school career and within your high school journey. At 17 or 18, I think most students should have an understanding of social justice and injustices that are going on in the world. If you're taking a class that are looking at injustices and in your 7th or 8th grade, while you're taking a history class, you might be able to understand things more when you enter high school. We have to put these conversations, we have to give these uncomfortable conversations to younger people, to 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, because they're capable. I can promise you that 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, and 12-year-olds are capable of understanding and digesting this information and internalizing it and then reflecting it when they grow up to become whatever they become.
And going off of what Mark said, I think a major thing is education reform, and not just in the classrooms, but with the schools. And that in this town, we actually convince the Board of Ed members that there is a problem with it, because I have had this, me and a few of my peers have had this conversation with the current board, well, not the current board members, but when I was in high school, the board members that they just did not see the disparity with Washington. And I'm not 100% sure about Hazel, but I know for a fact the difference between Washington and the rest of the schools. We need to find a way to make the education experience at all 7 elementary schools should be equal and equitable, since this is all the same town. There's no reason why, if you're a student at Washington, we play at recess on a concrete, not even just a concrete, we play in the concrete parking lot. We don't even have a playground to go to. There's no reason at recess we didn't have the little toys to play at recess. There's no reason why we didn't have agendas. They told us to go to Staples and buy the 99-cent composition notebooks. There was no reason why we didn't even have the brand new recorders. We have the old looking ones. And it's just small stuff like that, where we're not being provided equitable resources. That is something we need to change in this town, because because of a child's their family's income level, you shouldn't take it on the child's education experience. So and obviously everything that Mark said with education reform, that's very important, but also with the amount of resources that's being distributed across, that's being allocated across all 7 elementary schools.
I want to talk about what Mark highlighted from an emotional and psychological standpoint. One, the schools need to have more Black and brown teachers, 100%. I've been in the school system for 13 years now, and I can't even count up to 5 Black or brown teachers that I've had. So that's an issue, not seeing my people teach me about my history or teach me math. Where is the inspiration in that? There's so much inspiration in learning from people who look like you, and from having idols that look like you. And a lot of my teachers were idols to me growing up. So I think that that's very important. I also think that the history curriculums specifically need to be rewritten. They need to be looked at by teachers, the superintendent, anybody responsible, because there should be no reason that I learn about the Black Panthers my junior year, but I've learned about Martin Luther King since kindergarten. They were both just as important to the civil rights movement and Black history, and I should have learned about that, and white kids should have learned about that as well. There's no reason why I didn't learn about Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where there were successful Black-owned businesses and Black people were experiencing success. I should know that, and I should know that that's a part of my history. I shouldn't only be able to reference slavery and the civil rights movement as turning points in my history or important parts in my history as a Black woman. So that's very important, that kids feel motivated and feel like they can make it out of whatever struggle and any race issue that they've experienced, that they can experience success like any other race has, and like any other race has been highlighted in our history and curriculums.
I absolutely agree with both Kai and Mark, and Salam as well. In terms of the effects that not having that educational representation or those people to look to for African American students and other students of color, I feel like it goes way deeper than just, oh, well, the curriculum isn't as diversified. I agree with what Kaya said. I feel like the more that you know about your history as a person and your significance to the culture or the advancements that you see every day in modern life, it really gives you a foundation of not only your own self-worth, but it gives you a broader understanding of the world around you and a whole different set of I don't know, a whole nother set of knowledge that you can take with you when you're pursuing different career paths or when you're trying to emulate the same legacies that the Black Panthers or that of Malcolm X or that, Marcus Garvey or all of these amazing people that they don't typically really go into, or people that they try to villainize throughout the curriculum that we have all gone through as high school and, other grade level students. So I do feel like I agree when people say that they believe that the history and social studies curriculums of our township, as well as many others across the country, needs to be rewritten. I feel like it shouldn't even be a question that there should be more African American and Latino teachers. And I definitely agree that it has way more of an effect on the well-being and the spiritual and emotional value systems of our students than people may think it does.
Yeah, and picking up from on this criticism of the history department, the way that history has been taught, especially Black history in particular, I feel like I shouldn't have had to wait until my freshman year of college to learn about like the mass incarceration system, the school to prison pipeline, right, and to sort of see the ways in which slavery has just evolved into more intricate forms, right? I feel like that is in and of itself sort of exemplifies white supremacy, really, and just silencing the voices of the oppressed and allowing for oppression to propagate, right? I feel like if children have been exposed to these topics earlier on, we could still see that there's still a lot of gaps that we need to sort of overcome, and we need to bridge those gaps now. Because I just remember I had the class with Lawrence Bobo and Henry Gates, and every time I left, I was like, wow, so we're still getting like messed up now today. And none of these things have hardly gone away. And I think that if you expose children to that earlier, both like Black, white, Latino, etc., then you'll have more allyship, and students will be more sort of sensitive to these issues.
And just wanna for the sake of time, just kind of want to move on to the next question. But what was brought up was about like a lot of these great ideas about like how we can go about like making reform, and a lot of educational reform sounds like. But as we can see, there's a nationwide narrative, especially now after the unfortunate death of George Floyd, of this whole defund the police movement, right? Now, people have different interpretations of what that means. Does it mean we're just cutting the funding? Does it mean we're abolishing the police? In Minneapolis, where George Floyd was killed, they actually committed to the town council. They actually committed to abolishing the police department. Now, whether we know specifically what that entails, it's still up for debate. And there are a lot of people debating this idea. So yeah, I want to get some of your thoughts about what your meaning, what your definition of defund the police means, and would you agree with it or not?
I'll start. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I got muted on accident. I 100% agree with defunding the police. I think that should be a nationwide policy initiative. And I think that our, at least a clear and consistent goal should be abolition, and looking at things through an abolitionist mindset. Because when it comes to systems and different positions within government or law enforcement that have stemmed from racist nature, like the police force grew out of slave patrols, right? That is still embedded and rooted within how the police operate today, no matter which way you look at it. So that's why I think you have to look at building something completely new, because when you defund the police, that's the first step towards investing in communities. And it's a step towards restorative justice, something that's needed in all of our communities, but specifically the Black community, because we've been robbed of our labor for working for free. We've been robbed of equal opportunity. We've been robbed of life, liberty, and basically the pursuit of happiness. So investing in that gives chances for future generations to live a life that many before us couldn't live. When it comes towards abolition, why I agree for abolition and why I'm a proponent for abolition of the police force is because when you invest in communities, there's a clear correlation between a decrease in crime. There is no correlation between increasing funding of police or giving the police more resources and having a decrease in crime. It doesn't connect. So when you're working towards an abolition, you're working towards a new and better world, because when you can abolish something, you can build something new and better from it. And that's, I think, the framework we should always be working from.
So I agree with Mark. I think that a lot of people well, this is my view of the whole abolishing police thing. I think a lot of people get abolishing the current system of police with like stopping policing in general, like no regulation, no laws, just everybody being able to do whatever they want. And I feel like that's the easy way out for most people to think, so that they could automatically like not think about taking away police at all. But I completely agree with what he was saying, because I also learned this in our CG&E. The amount of money that America spends on the people regulating us rather than the actual communities themselves that they are regulating is kind of crazy. Like the amount of money we put into military or defense or for police, again, like in comparison, it's actually ridiculous. And I feel like they're giving them guns, they're giving them violent tactics, the things that they're teaching them, in addition to their already implicit biases, that doesn't do much for us or our community. So I completely agree with that's what abolishing police means to me, like stopping those implicit biases, like taking away the entire system altogether and just starting fresh, starting with new rules, the new amount of time you need to take to do things before you become a police officer and stuff like that, like change the requirements, all of that. So.
And what's important about this movement, I think, is that it's forcing us to question what we need police for. What is the role of police? For the most part, police officers aren't stopping crimes from happening. If a crime is going to happen, a crime will typically happen. A police officer usually isn't stopping it. So why then are police officers patrolling neighborhoods? Why are we over policing a lot of neighborhoods if they aren't actively stopping crimes from happening? And typically the issue with over policing and flooding streets with police officers to patrol is that if you look for trouble, you're typically going to find trouble. And when you have these police officers in these neighborhoods constantly going around on the streets, they will for the most part start trouble because they're looking for people committing crimes. They're looking for people doing the wrong thing, when for the most part, people usually aren't doing the wrong thing. It's more so police officers are standing at a point where they are looking for people who are doing the wrong thing, which usually results in people getting harmed.
Going off what everyone.
Yeah.
Oh wait.
I just want to say that, yes, I'm gonna let Salam answer this last question, and then after this, we're gonna go to open discussion.
Okay. The whole idea of law and order and police enforcement. I was actually just rereading the new Jim Crow, and they were talking about how they purposely were feeding the media that the whole idea of because the non-conservatives, the liberals, they wanted to start putting funding in poor communities, start funding Black communities in order to help the communities and put money where it actually needs to be put. And the conservatives didn't want to do this, so they started creating this idea that being poor is a culture rather than a sociological issue, and that like they just put themselves in these positions. They deserve to do that, and that's why that way more funding for policing, more funding, and more idea of law and order. So the whole idea just really proves that by defunding the police, you actually help the sociological issues that need to be solved rather than this whole idea that it's a culture. And I wanted to point out Camden, New Jersey, they actually defunded the police, and the case study that happened with Camden, New Jersey, they were their crime reduced like a lot because Camden, it's a very crime-ridden town, but in 2013 when they defunded the police, their homicide rates reduced by 62%. They went from 67 people being murdered in 1 year to 25 people being murdered. And they're definitely putting money in the community where money actually needs to be put, rather than giving the police like millions and millions of dollars that they don't need, or in some cases billions. I'm not sure, but in the big cities. So I 100% agree. Abolish the police, defund the police.
All right. Thank you guys, my panelists, for answering my questions. But now I want to open it up to the audience. So if anyone has a question for any one of the panelists, please just unmute yourself and ask away.
Hello?
Hey, we could hear you, but your audio is kind of low.
My bad. I was at the beach. I just tuned in. I was at the beach. I just tuned in. So, guys, first, about defunding the police, right? I just want to say that why are we talking about defunding the police without talking about the crime rates? Why are we just talking about what we should do and not talking about what we've not done? Or like the crime rates in this neighborhoods. Why are we not talking about that?
If you don't mind, I wanted to answer that.
But before Abraham, before you do that, I just want, for those of you who didn't hear, he asked if we're going to talk about defunding the police or abolishing the police, why don't we talk about crime rates and how that impacts police?
Another question, like we answered the other lady that said you need more black teachers, right? Black teachers teaching black kids, and that's what you said, right? The lady. I just want to explain something to you, that just because we have more black politicians, is there really a change in the black community? Like, blackness or the darkness of the skin of the teacher has nothing to do with the progress of the kid. Class. So we have to stop pushing all these narratives out there. We have to start talking about the culture of people. Why is it that if I'm the smartest person in my class, I am being told that I'm acting white? What is that? Why is it that the churches are not telling those ladies that are getting pregnant at the age of 18 just after they leave high school and have no daddies or have no fathers that is wrong? Who is talking about this? Why are we just talking about the white supremacists when we're not talking about what the black people are also doing? The rate of death coming from the police is about 2% of the black lives. But we're not talking about the 88% of black people dying by homicides, by little crimes in the black neighborhoods. Why? Who's talking about that? People are dying out there because of $20 and some change. We're not talking about that. Why? And you just brought up Martin Luther King, but you're not talking about what Martin Luther King said about the cultural change. You're not talking about that. And I just think that you people are just so bothered about equality of outcomes, that if you do this, this is going to happen. But it's not always like that. And you keep expecting the government to help us. But actually, the more the government help us, the worse it's getting. And I actually know most of you because I'm from your church. Abraham, I'm from your dad's church. If you don't know, this is James.
All right, so, I'm gonna let some of the panelists try to answer your questions.
Please do.
So for anyone who wants to answer, you can go ahead.
I think Gustav started answering this question with the last question, but I think that this issue is more far-reaching than just a behavioral issue of the Black community, right? I guess your first question about crime, right? And when you're talking about the crime rates in the community, right, or the need for the police system, right? I think we have to ask questions more along the lines of why do members of this demographic need to or why may they feel compelled to steal sort of like groceries or sort of capitalist items that have been flaunted in their face and that they've been deprived of, right? I think we have to to look at the gaps in the social welfare programs. We have to look at structures such as like food deserts, right, that systemically deprive members of this community from that equal opportunity, from that equal access. And also this past semester, I did a lot of work in mental health, particularly in Nigeria, but I think a lot of the teachings can be applied to the States as well. And if you look at mental health care in Nigeria or in the African continent as a whole, it was originally conceived as sort of a custodial model that looks a lot like our police system here, right? Where you just keep people who are doing bad things or exhibiting bad behavior locked up in a cell, right? But then what is that doing for them, right? When they get out, they can't have a job, right? Once they're in prison, are they like learning how to change their behaviors to be more like socially viable? I think we need to put more money into our healthcare, our mental health care system in particular, and look at more restorative outcomes, right? Like we don't have to vilify people who do crime, right? We don't have to kill people who are doing crime, right? I think we have to look at ways that we can invest our funds in the community members to prevent these issues from rising in the first place.
I'm sorry.
I'd like to touch on. I'd like to touch on the statistic that he brought up about black on black crime.
Did we lose Gustav?
Gustav.
Yeah, I think he was just frozen for a second. He probably should unfreeze soon.
Crime rate. There's a higher Asian on Asian crime rate than there is on anything else. There's going to be a higher crime rate within a race. Secondly, the reason that we're so outraged about the police killing people is because the police's job is not to kill innocent and unarmed civilians. A police's job is to protect unarmed civilians, and the outrage stems from when we call the police, we shouldn't fear for our lives. When we call the police, we should feel protected. However, we are fearing for our lives because unarmed people are getting killed by police and they're not being held accountable, which is a big issue.
Yeah, I also want to comment real quick. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say because Gustav, you froze, so I don't think anyone heard your first point, and I feel like your first point was probably pretty big. So I don't know if you want to reset.
Yeah, my first point was just that when people live in the same community, there's obviously going to be a higher crime rate within that community. So there are more black people living with black people in black communities. So that's the reason there is a high black on black crime rate. But that you can't use that as a scapegoat to say, well, why are we outraged about police crime or police killing people? Because their job is to protect us, not to kill us. And when a black person kills a black person, the person who killed him will typically be held accountable and will be tried. Whereas when a police officer kills an unarmed black person, he's not getting convicted.
I agree with what Gustav said, and on the points that you made, another comment on black crime. The reason why we are not talking about the things that black people are doing to black people is because when you see murders happening in black communities or predominantly black areas, black people are not killing black people because they're black. That's why we're talking about cops killing black people, because it is a race issue and it is a systemic issue that has been going on in this country for a long time. In communities that are underfunded, that have been disenfranchised, that have been gentrified, the crime rates do go up because people are not being provided with the same resources as wealthier or whiter communities. People are being forced to struggle and are being forced into industries that are looked at as villainized or that are criminalized by the white people who fund these institutions that are disenfranchising these people, which is why it's so easy for the majority to villainize impoverished communities or predominantly black communities that are not as highly funded by the government. Another thing is the significance of having more black teachers in schools is way bigger, because not only is it just a fundamental fact that if you see someone who looks like you are more susceptible to what they have to say, and you take what they have to say more into account because you understand that they're coming from a similar place as you are, not just in the educational world, but in the general world in existence. And they understand your circumstances as well as theirs, especially in the circumstance of education being so valuable, especially to Black youth. having people in the education system who look like you and who are giving you access to the information that will help you succeed is extremely valuable. And that's why people need to have more representation, and having more representation for not just Black students, but for white and other races of students to see Black teachers in these positions will also lower the chances of people normalizing the stereotypes you were talking about how people sometimes say that, make comments about Black people being out of place in predominantly white institutions or other things of that nature. If we had more African American teachers and educators of color, these stereotypes would not be normalized. People wouldn't think that the color of someone's skin dictates their capabilities or their level of education or their chances of success. And I feel like while many of these things may seem like they're not interconnected, they very much so are. So I don't know if anyone wants to comment on that.
I also just want to make the point that when we're talking about things that are existing within the Black community or Black culture through our stereotypes, such as like not having our fathers present, and where those kinds of narratives come from, I would like to connect it to things like the criminal justice system. We're going to talk about systemic racism and inequity. We know that Black men, I think the statistic, and someone might have to fact check me on this, but the statistic is 1 in 3 Black men are going to end up in jail, right? So if we look at this call right now, between me, Charles, and Gustav, one of us might end up in jail, which is very interesting because simply for being Black, and this is statistically proven, we are more likely to be incarcerated and enter the prison system, which then doesn't allow us to get jobs, which then removes us from our family, which then kind of breaks apart and has systemically broken apart the Black community. So when those comments are kind of made, it hurts me a little bit because as a community, we have to understand that where our issues come from aren't by nature, nor are they on accident. They are purposely conducted and have been calculated to disrupt what's going on, to disrupt success, to disrupt equal opportunity. So I think when we make comments like, why do we see 18-year-olds having babies and no father present? How about then we invest in family planning instead of investing in the carceral state? How about we invest in teaching sex education than investing in police officers in schools? I think those are the better questions we have to ask, right? How are we ending up in this position is not by fault of a culture we're perpetuating. It's rather that a system has been put in place where it's more likely for us to end up this way than to end up the way in which we consider more successful or normal.
And Mark, you make a great point now, and this kind of leads to our second question from Kim Robinson, who is a West Orange High School teacher. And she would like to know what students would recommend with regards to restructuring security and police presence at the high school.
I think security has to act a lot less like the police force. It's very interesting. I didn't know that other high schools in New Jersey and around the country, for that matter, didn't have security guards until I got to college. My roommate's from Virginia. When I told him about, our high school had security guards patrolling the hallways, looking for disruptive students, or whatever that may look like, my roommate was shocked because his high school in Fairfax, Virginia didn't have that. Rather, they had actually more counselors than we did, and they had mental health days where students could take mental health days. And they were far more progressive, where I would say, in supporting students than we were. So I think security might be good in a place where school shootings and stuff like that still happens in our society. Yes, I think students should feel safe from literal being violent, and that school should be a safe space. But I don't think security should be used as a way to police students into good behavior, because if anybody knows anything, that doesn't work. You can stick students in out of school suspension and in school suspension and, pull them out of class as many times as you want, but that doesn't work. So how about we start having real and honest discussions with students about, what can we do to help you to be a better student in the classroom and outside the classroom? Do we need more recreation? Do we need more staff support? Do we need maybe more than one teacher in the classroom, right? Maybe more students need more individualized attention. And as our school is expanding and our population is growing bigger, maybe we need more teachers or another campus or something like that. But our funding into, security guards is good for like a football game, but it's not necessarily good for, during the lunchroom to walk around and feel like you're being surveilled all the time. You know that's not good for society, and that's not good for schools.
And going off of that, I think West Orange High School, well, one, I was actually very surprised, Mark, by what you said about your roommate. And two, I think West Orange High School is kind of like a perfect example of school to prison pipeline system. Like the fact that we have the academy, no one really talks about it, but the academy is a 100% example of school to prison pipeline system. Instead of having all these security guards in the hallway trying to look for trouble, instead of having the 3 strikes are out and not even out, go straight to the academy and being isolated from the rest of society, why don't we have more mental health resources? And I know that we have resources at West Orange High School. I've worked tirelessly with them for Green Ribbon Week and for Mental Health Awareness Week, etc. But it's not that, the presence isn't that prevalent on campus. The students aren't aware of the access to the not the guidance counselors, the SAC counselors. The students aren't aware of the resources that we have, and the resources that we do have to begin with aren't as great as it can be. Instead of funding for the academy, why do we have the academy? How come after the 3rd strike, you go straight and you're isolated from the society? Why don't we provide more resources to those students? Why don't we have more resources at our school for the students rather than punishing them, you know?
And to add on to what Salam said about the whole resources thing, a lot of times when I talk to other people at West Orange High School, or who went to West Orange High School, obviously, we really have 2 different things that we learned throughout our 4 years. Like throughout my 4 years, I was in like honors classes, or like AP. So like the difference that people have learned in AP and honors, obviously that makes sense, but like in what they learned and what people in like regular classes learned, it doesn't really make all that much sense to me, because there's kind of a disparity in that also, in how much people learn. And you also get a lot of resources offered to you when you are in honors and AP classes, which I think is unfair. And I feel like that doesn't make sense, since, like Salam said, there's so many resources that people have in West Orange High School, and it's very easy for the people that get those resources say things like, well, we all went to the same school, like, why didn't you know about it, and stuff like that. So that also goes with Salam saying the whole thing about West Orange High School is the perfect example of like the pipeline system and how society works in that way. So.
Awesome. Any more questions from the audience? Please keep them coming. If you don't want to say it out loud, you can also just message it in the chat. But if you have any more questions, we are all ears.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, this is Wendy Lansky. I just want to make a comment before my question. You all have restored my hope in the world tonight, and I don't say that lightly. With everything going on, with social unrest, with all these senseless killings with the pandemic, to know that the youth are making this your priority, I have no words. So thank you all. My question is, I consider myself an ally, and I try to take that role seriously and do what I can. And I know what that means to me. But I would like to know from any of you who wish to comment, what more can I do? I try to speak out. I don't allow people to say and do things in front of me and let that go without saying anything. One of the things I also do is I call out people that I know who are normally well-meaning, but do stand by and don't speak up. And I want to be more than a person who, I go to protests, I wear my Black Lives Matters hat, I try to do what I can, but what else is there? What am I not thinking of that could really impact and help what all of you are talking about? Thank you.
Well, to go with the whole like calling other people out thing, I think, again, a lot of people respond to not just calling out, but also education. Like people like to have good and bad mixed in when they're being criticized. So I think something that's important when a lot of us are saying like, you can't do this or you can't say that, I think it's also important to tell people why they can't, and not in like a malice way, but like in a, I'm your friend and I'm telling you that this is wrong. I'm educating you kind of way. And I think another important thing is when you're an ally is to not be so focused, and not you specifically, but people who are allies in general, to not focus so specifically on like posting BLM or posting about, obviously you should do that, but like being more of a face rather than like actually doing things on your own, or like educating people by yourself when you're alone, when no one's watching. And it's important to have discussions with others who don't have the same opinions as you, because it's very easy to talk to people who think like you. Like that goes nowhere. We get nowhere with that. So I think that's very important. So that was my take.
And oh,
okay, thank you. I just want to say one, thank you very much. I appreciate all that you just said. If you work, a piece of advice is to, if you ever experience microaggressions, not necessarily towards you, but maybe your colleagues, or if you ever experience or hear or see just like racism, blatant racism or microaggressions, like I acknowledge, call that out, but also make sure that if your company or whoever you work for is acknowledging that yes, they'll make a change, make sure you follow up with that and make sure that they follow up with that. Make sure that there's actual change being made. We highlighted this earlier on. People can talk the talk, but make sure that they walk the walk. Make sure that there's actual change being made. And I just want to say that I appreciate that you as an adult are trying to do your part, because like I said, it shouldn't just be on the youth. Maybe try to host a panel like this amongst adults in West Orange of all colors and races. They need to see this and they need to hear. So yeah, that's my advice.
Thank you. And I am in the corporate world, and when you were talking, several of you in the beginning, about microaggressions, so many scenarios just kind of flashed before me. So I completely agree that that's one of the arenas that as adults we really can impact change.
Also, on the topic of advice for allies, especially for adults who are working in the corporate world or an office setting, something that I think in parallel, allies who are protesting in cities like New York City, Los Angeles and stuff like that, who are putting their bodies literally before Black bodies in front of police, is also reflecting that in the workspace, where sometimes Black workers or, you know, I would actually put this to marginalized workers of any community, are more at risk of losing their job or facing backlash from an employer or their boss or supervisor when they speak out for themselves, right? If they know that they might be more qualified for a position and don't get it, or if you know, a boss makes a comment about, you know, a coworker's hair or body or something like that, and they can't speak up for themselves for fear of maybe backlash, as I said before. This is where I think white allies are really useful, because while some people might not see it as tactful, or as, you know, they might also receive some backlash, just statistically, white people are less likely to receive that backlash from their employer or from their boss. So I implore all allies to step up for Black people in the workplace and say, hey, I think it's a part of someone's right to question, why did this person get promoted? Or why did this person get a raise or a bonus before this person? Or how come you made this comment, right? There's more support, and there will always be support for allies who do those things, but there might not always be as much support for Black people who stand up in those situations. So that's just, I think, the best way, especially in the workplace, that most adults can take and do on their own.
Hi, I have not really a question, but a comment. I was recently appointed to the West Orange Democratic Committee. I'm in West Orange High School, graduating this month. Wow. And I would love to help out in any way that I can to work with the Young Dems and the Democratic Committee to be like somewhat of a liaison, or just a go-between in any way that's possible, to just help you guys as much as possible.
That's much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say on that, I'm the co-founder. I guess I haven't really been speaking as much. I will, I guess, find you on Facebook or something like that, so I get your contact information. And
my Instagram is Rebecca S1016. I think we follow each other already. So
okay, all right, yeah, for sure. Then I'll contact you on there.
Yeah, I really look forward to helping you as much as humanly possible. I am extremely for you guys, and I will be as much of an ally as I can possibly be.
Amazing. We love to hear it.
Awesome. We have another question. I'm just going to
Wait,
read it out
Charles,
here.
can I comment on the previous question?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something because I had a conversation with Mark over this past summer that I think very fits perfect in this conversation. It's really kind of stuck with me to this day. And I guess bring context to what we were talking about that summer. We were talking about like the presidential election, and we were talking about the lack of diversity in the field. And personally, I was like supporting Bernie, I guess you could say. And he had talked about how if Bernie was, I guess you could say, a true progressive, or he cared about the movement, he would step out the way and let a person of color step into that position and step into that spotlight. And at the time, it didn't really resonate with me, the argument. But as time has really progressed on, I've kind of really seen the importance of what he was saying, in the sense that as an ally, it's very important to kind of just step out of the way. It's important to kind of give the platform to those voices, because those are the ones that have been neglected. It's not your place to kind of necessarily always be the one to speak on behalf of them. You're just there to necessarily just support them, to give them that area to uplift them. And like, for example, I guess you could say in context to this, my purpose of being an ally in this panel was to kind of step out of the way completely. Like I'm the co-founder of Young Dems, and I put a lot of effort into the organization as a whole. And I do a lot behind the scenes. But for me, like, I don't really care about being on the panel. I don't care about being the moderator. I don't care about being a part of it in any way. I just care about having the platform for those people to speak up, just because I feel like if you don't step out of the way and you don't uplift them, you don't give that platform, then who else will? Which I feel like, I guess you could say in terms of like white privilege and things like that, like that's the privilege that we have. We have these platforms, we have these opportunities that other communities don't have, and we have to be the ones to kind of just step out of the way and give it to them. But yeah, that's what I just had to say.
Please go ahead.
No, that's a great point. And just to move on to our next question, someone wrote this in. It's asked, with this movement becoming a part of our lives in such a large way, for anyone who wishes to answer, do you think there's enough intersectionality happening, i.e. like Black LGBTQ lives? Do you think that's happening within the combos we're having?
I wanted to answer this, but I really don't think there's enough conversation being happened about intersectionality in this case. I feel like there's not enough people advocating. I feel like for Black Lives Matter, to many, it means like Black men lives matter, Black cis men lives matter. And that's not the case. Black women, there's so many Black women that are victims of police brutality that's not even being spoken of. There's women who have been there. I'm so sorry, I forgot her name, but she was pregnant and the baby died as a result of police brutality. Breonna Taylor, I feel like we're not advocating as much for Breonna Taylor, and I feel like I'm not sure whether it's because of the fact she's a Black woman or whether or not there was never a video released, but I feel like we're not advocating enough for her. We're not advocating enough for trans Black women, because the thing is with trans Black women, though I'm like 90% sure I saw the statistic a few times, but trans Black women, their life expectancy is 35 years old. That is horrible, and there's not enough conversation about it. So many times when we say Black Lives Matter, people aren't including trans Black lives. Trans Black lives are just as valuable, and yet they're the ones who I feel like are being hurt the most.
Hello?
I thought I just heard someone say hello, but okay. Anyone else want to answer that? Or if anyone has any more questions, you can ask.
I have a question. Okay,
yes,
so
please.
my name is Leia. I'm here with my sister Hannah. I know some of you on the panel from high school, and I just want to say thank you so much for putting this panel together. This was amazing and very educational. The question I kind of have for you, the committee, is what right now, do you have any immediate plans that you're working on, like more forums or like kind of next steps, if you will? Yeah. And again, thank you so much. You guys are
Charles, do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, we can both take turns. And I'll just want to say, what's up, Blake? What's up, guys? Haven't seen you guys in a minute.
It's good to see you.
Tell Chris I said hi.
Good to see you. I will do. But yeah, Bijan, you can.
Yeah. So I guess to give context to what we have planned without diving too far in to the like tangible, I guess, details. When me and Charles first started this organization, the real hope was to set a foundation for youth, in the sense that we wanted to not just organize young Dems in the sense like it would become just some club or just some organization where people would just kind of join and do surface level things or just kind of do community oriented things. Like we really hoped for this to kind of be a platform for youth to kind of advocate in a very organized electoral sense. So I guess, and just to give a little foreshadowing to what we do have planned, in the past, me and Charles have kind of really set up some strong outlets for us. And we had a fundraiser back in December, and that allowed us to kind of open up a bank account. And now with that bank account, we were able to create our own website, which we will be launching very soon. We were able to get an ActBlue donation link where we could actively seek donations from the community. And really the whole purpose of it all is to kind of amplify the candidates that we align with, who we think are progressive, who we think will advance the interests of this conversation, the people on the panel. So I guess to give a more tangible answer, with the website is coming out, we will be fundraising money, and we'll be amplifying the voices of our candidates. And on top of that, on top of endorsements and things like that, we plan to do, grassroots outreach eventually once this whole thing is over, in terms of canvassing for candidates, phone banking for candidates, and a lot too of just kind of digital media initiatives, like educational initiatives of, I guess, building up a platform that's educational and inspirational, which is really the number one goal that we have had in this organization. I guess you could say in the next week or so, me and Charles are planning actually on rewriting our bylaws. So I guess to all the youth on this call, we are planning from moving from an executive board with a president, a treasurer, a vice president. We're going to move away from that, and we're going to be moving towards a steering committee where there is no hierarchy, and everyone will have necessarily like organizational roles. For example, like I specialize in communications. So I'm going to kind of probably take up that role, and then Charles will probably take up a different role. And we will be opening up applications to expand the organization and expanding our membership. But yeah, I think that's all I can really say on what we have planned for the future.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say something, but Bijan kind of just took all the words out of my mouth. Basically, yeah. So we're just mainly gonna be focusing on the digital educational campaign and making sure we get the fundraising up to make sure that we're able to do other things afterwards. I don't want to give out too many, like all the details of what we're doing, but like, yeah, we do got some stuff in the works. But yeah. All right. Any more questions? I know it's already past 8:30.
I think that. Hello.
Yeah.
I still got questions and about the young man that said something about like instead of us talking about what's it called? He said something about why the kids don't have fathers. We should talk about family planning or something like that, pushing money to family planning. I just want to correct something real quick that this has nothing to do with family planning or whatever he said that it was about. And why I said that is that it has to do with the culture change in the Black communities. And wow, another thing I will explain that is that because we asked the government for help and they gave us welfare, right? They gave us welfare for that. And I don't understand where this idea came from that money can replace a father. When these kids, when they get pregnant, they can get some money or something like that. That's the problem. You have to let the fathers take responsibility. You should find their fathers. A father is more like a father figure. And I want to remind you guys about President Obama, which I think most of you would consider an idol, right? When he was in his hometown, he made a speech and he said, "I was raised by my grandparents and mom, a single mom, But he still talked about his father. He said his father will have meant the whole world to him. And he said that we should be on the street, on the road, in the barber shops, everywhere, telling people about the real truth. And it was chastised for that. They said it was being harsh on the black communities. He was just saying the truth. So I don't. All of you answered the questions, right? You answered the questions without actually answering the question. You just kept on diverting to other places, telling me about the health issue. This has nothing to do about how many people are going to the hospitals. You're talking about why don't they have fathers in the first place? Okay.
So I just want to say, I think the point of what they were trying to make was the fact that there are external factors that are causing the lack of African American fathers in the household, which can lead to a host of other issues, such as racial systemic racism, such as constant police brutality, such as policing in such black communities, and how that has led to a proliferation of African Americans in the criminal justice system. So I think that is going, but I think the larger point what they were trying to make with the health issues and things, all those other educational issues, was the fact that if we can find a way to reduce the amount we spend on policing communities instead of focusing on things such as health, such as opportunities, such as education, they will probably see a dramatic decrease in crime to begin with, right? So I think that's kind of like the main focus of what that was, the argument was trying to make.
Coming to that, sir, about what you just said, right? Coming to that, sir, I wanna give you a stat from the past, right? During the time of the Jim Crow laws, with the Jim Crow being around, right? We had black parenting, and we had their fathers and their mothers parenting kids at the rate of 75%. And we had the white families at the rate of 73%. This was during the Jim Crow laws, right? But after the Jim Crow laws, and we went to the war against poverty, I was vice president, right? So after that time, it dropped. And right now, the percentage is almost at 41. And it's dropping. And the white families are still at 72. So why are you talking about it? Like, the white people really have a lot to do in our lives like that. We should talk about the individual problems too.
Okay. As a response to this, so I don't know if you heard what I said earlier, like when I was talking about abolish the police. One of the main things that I mentioned was during like the 70s and 80s, conservatives, what they wanted to do in order to stop liberals from funding the Black communities, because the issue with the Black community is a result of systemic racism. We were built, like this country was built in order to oppress us, and as a result of that, as a result of the years of oppression, our communities don't match white communities. And liberals wanted to say it's a sociological issue, which it is, which is why we need to defund the police and put money back into these communities to solve this issue. However, conservatives, his name is Robert Byrd, I believe. He released this book, and in this book, he explains how he used specific coded language in order to shift the narrative in order from a sociological issue to a cultural issue. And pretty much what that means is that conservatives made this idea, they pushed it on the media to make this idea that the problem with Black people is Black people, and that the problem with Black people is that it becomes a cultural thing, and that we're reliant on welfare, and that we need to help ourselves, instead of that it's a sociological issue that this country isn't helping us. And I think we need to switch that narrative, and because that is exactly what this country wants us to do, to believe that Black people are the problem, when in reality, this country is the problem, and we need to solve that on a systemic level.
Okay.
We have other questions, so I encourage you to email us about more questions you have, and we'll definitely be more than happy to answer. We can have more of a discussion. But I just want to give it over to I hope I'm saying Kieran. Yes, you can. So you have a question.
Yeah. Thank you all for having this. I think discussion is really important. But one question I have is, why is it antithetical to improving the community? Why do you have to abolish the police in order to institute programs that you talked about, such as mental health, et cetera, et cetera? It's not either or. We can reform the police and institute these programs. You don't have to tear it down in order to have something else. In addition, when you cited Camden, the Camden Police Department was dissolved because of systemic corruption, and but it was replaced with another police department, and about 100 of the officers were actually rehired. It wasn't removed completely. So I think that is incorrect. So that's on police. I don't understand why it's an either or. And how is it that you say that it's not political, but then every single member on the panel agrees with abolishing the police, which is an inherently political statement? I think it's okay if this is a political movement, but I think you can own that and say that the policies that you're putting forward are very political. And also on the education, I think Mark said that there needs to be critical race theory taught in schools. And I completely disagree, based on the fact that critical race theory is about criticizing and problematizing every interaction between all people and finding instances of hidden racism in every single interaction, which makes people inherently hostile towards each other and actually makes it more racist of a system when every single interaction you have with someone who is a different race than you is politicized and made to be a race issue. So I don't think critical race theory should be taught, although I do think that it's important to have more teaching on Black leaders, Black history, and other histories. I was never taught about South Asian history. I'm South Asian, never talked about in school at all. So yes, that is important, but critical race theory should definitely not be taught, in my opinion, at all. So those are some of my questions / points that I just wanted to see your guys' thoughts on, and I'm really glad that we're having this discussion and appreciate all of your voices.
I think to address the why police, like why it has to be an either or situation, I think that's because that's how America makes it seem. Like that's how the government treats it. They fund all these defense mechanisms, the military, policing, and all these kinds of things, and that indirectly defunds such things as mental illness, mental health programs, education, and stuff like that. If it could be both, I mean, like, if it could be both and police were not, and the current system of policing was not inherently racist, then that would be great. But like realistically, if we're talking about the society we live in, it's an either or situation. So if you could have mental health programs, family programs, instead of hostile policing in our communities, where like others in this call, like Gustav and Mark were saying, they go out looking for trouble, then why would we not choose the better one that actually betters individuals, which in turn betters society?
If I could follow up from what Amber was also saying, two things. I'll address the abolishing the police abolition and also critical race theory being taught in schools. Starting with police abolition, I often think of the police as the gatekeepers to the criminal justice system. I don't even like calling it criminal justice system because justice, as we've seen time and time again, isn't served. So for now, we'll call it the criminal administration system, one. So the police serve as gatekeepers to the criminal administration system because they decide who is going to enter prisons and the carceral state and who is going to be let go free of, or will get community service hours, or will have people petition and write letters on their behalf for their freedom. As I think the police actually do more harm than they might do good on a national level. I say that because looking at this from the lens of a Black man, right? And I do understand that as a probably more palatable light-skinned man, I have more privilege in saying that I don't get harassed by the police as often as my darker-skinned Black brothers and sisters do. But the point I'm trying to make with police abolition is that you have to look at abolition the same framework we look at abolition for everything else. So if we want to start with the idea of slavery, right? People at the time were literally arguing for slavery because they could not understand a world without it. They couldn't understand how money would be made without slavery. I think about when people say police reform or criminal justice reform, look at how that sentence looks if you put slavery in front of it. Slavery reform. It doesn't make sense. You cannot have a system with broken pieces while you're trying to fix the other parts of it. What it needs is a total removal and implementation of something new. Granted, I'm still working on this process of reimagining the world and figuring out what a world without the police looks like, right? With a different public safety aspect that can be necessary for violent or emergency circumstances. But we also know that there can be other systems put into place to handle, cases when it comes to, like, why do we go to the police? And we know the police don't help victims of sexual assault, or those suffering from mental illness, or any other issues, right? The police are tasked with so much that police abolition is necessary because we need to specify what the police does. We cannot have the police out here randomly and I would say without cohesion in what their purpose is. Who are they protecting and who are they serving? And I can honestly say to you right now, it's not the Black community at all. So that's why I believe in police abolition, because you have to remove a system to build something new. You cannot keep broken pieces and build off of a broken or shaken foundation. When it comes to critical race theory, I completely disagree with your argument that it builds a hostile environment. I think that can definitely be seen as I'm in college and we look at things through a critical race lens. We'll read literature or scholarly work that is figuring out, how looking at the criminal justice system or criminal administration system, for this example, through a racial lens is necessary because we understand that things impact people differently based upon their race. And if you cannot wait until someone is 18 or 19, 20, 21, or 50 for this matter, to, have a understanding of race beyond Martin Luther King, right? Critical race theory, I don't think breeds hostility. It breeds a critical understanding of how the world has been developed and centered around race, something that actually doesn't exist and is a social construct. But so many things are dependent upon race. Opportunity, inequality, equity, chances of literally surviving in this world are dependent upon race. So we have to look at that we have to teach students through a critical race lens so that we can have a more holistic understanding of the world we live in. And when it comes to the South Asian education as well, I think that should be incorporated in teaching history as well. I think that should be incorporated in teaching, honestly, anything. Any community deserves to have a seat at the table in which things are going to be taught. So I don't want this to be taken as, because we're speaking on the Black community, and I'm sorry for speaking for so long right now, but I don't want this to be taken as, because we're speaking about the Black community right now, that the South Asian community matters any less, or that because you didn't learn about South Asian history, we can't learn about Black history as well. What we are doing is using our platform to advocate for our community, and I implore you to do the same. And if I can support you, I would like to do that as well. So I would hope that we can also include South Asian history and South Asian culture into our curriculum of education in West Orange Public Schools.
And I just want to I know I'm the moderator and I've been playing defense neutral as possible, but I just want to give a little my thoughts in here with this. For gives perspective when it comes to especially for police reform, right? The New York PD, NYPD, for example, is awarded a budget of $6 billion, right? $6 billion. They are given military grade weapons to police like civilians, right? So I think it's not so much the idea about getting rid of the police and having nothing left afterwards. We have to literally reimagine the way we think about public safety. Like, for example, when you have the military budget that makes over $700-something billion, which is eats up the largest chunk of our American economy, no wonder we have crime, because we don't invest in other things like education, like technology, like opportunities that can actually lead people to other career paths. But that's just my 2 cents.
Charles? Susan McCartney?
Yes. Hello.
Hello. I need to chime in at this point. I thank you for the invitation as an elected official for the Township of West Orange for a number of years. The town will have their budget hearings next Saturday. My interpretation of defunding the police did not mean abolishing the police. That's not going to happen by next Saturday. That's when we hear our budget. It would be interesting to see the police budget because I guess my interpretation of defunding meant to reallocate. That this police state that you're referring to look at funds that would go to mental health, you discussed, to go to public health, housing, youth services, mental health services, training, to see where that funding is. So it'll be interesting to see what the budget looks like that the police present next Saturday for the council to review, because we're hoping that all of that will be built into it.
Thank you. Thank you again for giving us the information. It's definitely going to be useful.
I really wanted to sit in and hear what everyone was seeing and feeling, and to see. I thank you for the next steps. We talked about the ordinances already last night on the town hall discussion. I know the mayor has met with a few of you already, and we want to keep those discussions going and remain as open as possible to make changes, the needed changes. So thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing.
No problem. Are there any more questions? I know we're inching towards 9 o'clock now, so if there's any more questions, final call, last call. Okay, so I guess with that in mind, I guess that concludes our panel discussion for today. I want to thank you all for coming on and listening to all our panelists. I want to thank the panelists for coming on and speaking to everyone. It's been a great, riveting discussion. We almost went 2 hours. Just so you know, I had no timetable for how long this would take. So for a 2 hour long discussion, thank you guys all for keeping it lively and keeping it going. But thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah. Also, to add on to that point, I guess from the perspective of Young Dems, for all youth on this call, if you are interested in not even necessarily just becoming a member, but also holding a position of leadership in our organization, we are going through a very robust rebuilding stage, and we have a lot planned. I've personally, and Charles as well, have really grown professionally over the past year, and we've learned a lot, and there's a lot we really want to do, and I think our platform really has an impact to really uplift youth in our town. So please, if you are interested in joining or holding a position of leadership, reach out to us, and we can get that process started. And to all the older people in the call, thank you for coming. It's very important to bridge that gap between those two generations. And if you would like to support Young Dems in any way, we will be releasing our website soon, and in that there is a donation link, and we need money to keep our website alive. We need money to keep our bank account alive, and to kind of just fund our efforts as an organization as a whole. And for anyone who works in politics, you know that money is everything, and you can't really run a grassroots organization unless you have donations. So just be on the lookout for that if you want to donate. And yeah, thank you to everyone for being here. It really means a lot.
Thank you for having us.
Also, I want to throw in a little something real quick before you guys go. I know me, Anya, Mark, and a few other people from West Orange Youth Caucus, we're trying to implement a student-led racial bias training for all educators and Board of Ed members. And we were going to go to the Board of Ed meeting on June 22nd and speak on it. So the more people we have, the better it is to show that we actually want this to happen. So if you guys are free on June 22nd to join the Zoom call, please do. The strength in numbers, this. It would be amazing to have that implemented.
Yeah, definitely. Just make sure. Can you just send that reminder? Send it to the chat or something about the information so we can get it out.
Yeah.
Awesome. But on that note, any more plugs? Any more Instagram hashtags? What did you guys say?
just one plug. If anybody wants an action item to leave from here, read up about Juneteenth as we approach it next Friday. Learn a lot about what liberation means for the Black community, and especially try to read into Black female authors like Kimberly, or just scholars in general, Angela Davis, Kimberly Crenshaw, Audre Lorde, Bell Hooks, any that you can. They're really great authors and some of my favorites. So if anybody wants to take away anything educational from that, I would say those are some great people to read.
Yeah. Awesome. I guess that concludes our panel discussion. Thanks, everyone. Hope you all stay safe, stay healthy.
Yep.
And
be safe.
Yep.
Have a good one, guys. Thank you for coming.
I have
Thank you.
Thank you.